A pair of lovesick youths face a forbidding fate as their love gets caught in the perpetual blood feud between their respective clans. The peaceful summer day in Verona is disturbed when the servants of Capulet's house pick a fight with the members of their sworn enemy, the Montague. Samson provokes Abraham to draw his sword, starting a street brawl. Just then, Benvolio, Lord Montague's nephew, arrives and attempts to break the brawl by reminding them that the prince has forbidden such a public fight. However, Lord Capulet's nephew, Tybalt, shows up with a group of his fellow Capulets and leads the argument into a full-fledged battle. Tybalt strikes a Montague as more members from both clans grab their weapons and join the riot, including Lord Capulet and Lord Montague. The market square becomes a battlefield where townsfolk are terrorized. Fortunately, the prince arrives, putting a stop to the uprising. This is the third time both clans have caused a public brawl, so the prince orders the lords of both houses to meet him. While tending to an injured man, Lady Montague is relieved that her son, Romeo, wasn't around to witness the uproar. When Romeo comes home, Benvolio notices that he's sad. The handsome lad confesses that he's missing something in his life. Romeo sees some of their servants injured and immediately knows it's because of the fight against their enemy again. He walks away in disappointment, so Benvolio follows suit. At the Capulets' house, Lord Capulet just returned after receiving the penalty for the brawl, thinking it might not be hard to make peace with their enemy. He's with Paris, his daughter's suitor, who asks to marry her already. Lord Capulet tells him to wait for 2 more summers and see if his daughter is ready to be a wife. Nevertheless, he advises Paris to court his daughter and even invites the gentlemen to their feast tonight. Meanwhile, Lady Capulet summons her beautiful daughter, Juliet, to her room. The lady sends everyone out of the room except the nurse to talk to Juliet alone. Juliet's birthday is coming soon, so Lady Capulet asks her opinion about marriage. Although the girl says she's not dreaming of it yet, her mother convinces her to think about it and encourages her to consider Paris. Juliet answers that she'll try to like her suitor, putting her mother at ease before they proceed to the feast. That night, some Montague men are heading to crash the Capulets' party, led by Romeo's best friend, Mercutio. Romeo is reluctant to go because he had a dream about that night. Mercutio suddenly jokes about his dream of a fairy's midwife, whom he calls Queen Mab, making the boys laugh. Mercutio grows impassioned but adds that this same fairy can bring misfortune. He seems distraught, so Romeo calms him down. At the feast, Lord Capulet welcomes the guests. The Montagues successfully enter unrecognized, as they are wearing masks. Romeo watches the guests on the dance floor, and there he's enchanted by Juliet's captivating beauty. He can't take his eyes off her until Juliet catches him staring. Romeo says to himself that she's the most beautiful girl he has seen and wonders if he's in love. Tybalt sees Romeo hiding and immediately notifies Lord Capulet. However, seeing that it's the young Montague, Lord Capulet orders Tybalt to leave him alone since he knows the lad is well behaved. During the Moresca dance, Romeo somehow manages to join the circle, which allows him to dance with Juliet. This sight infuriates Tybalt even more, prompting him to urge Lord Capulet again to intervene, which only angers the latter. When the dance concludes, Juliet moves away from the crowd while Peter, a Capulet crooner, takes center stage to sing a moving ballad song. While Peter's voice enthralls everyone, Juliet returns to the crowd to search for the masked boy. On the other side, Romeo is eagerly looking for her too. When they finally spot each other, they carefully move closer until they're at each side of a pillar. From behind, Romeo suddenly takes her hand, surprising Juliet. He desires to kiss her, but the lady says that lips must be used in prayer. In response, he invites her palm to put on his, likening them to lips touching each other. Juliet holds his hand but immediately pulls back, fearing that somebody might notice them. Romeo can't hold back as he leans closer to meet her lips. As they are lost in each other's touch, the nurse shows up to tell Juliet that her mother has summoned her. When Romeo learns that Lady Capulet is Juliet's mother, he realizes that he's doomed to fall in love with a foe's daughter. At the end of the party, Juliet learns that the masked lad is Romeo, the only son of their Lord Montague. She's dumbfounded, yet she knows it's too late as love has already sprung in her heart. Outside the Capulet house, Romeo climbs over the wall to hide from his drunken friends. The light on the window compels him to spy, and there he finds Juliet on the balcony. Once again, he's mesmerized by her beauty. He considers calling out to her but holds back. Instead, he marvels at how she stares at the sky while leaning her cheeks upon her hand. Just then, his beautiful lady speaks out his name, wondering where he is. Romeo overhears Juliet wishing for him to renounce his name, but if not, she will give up hers. The Montague name doesn't matter to her much as it's the name of their enemy, not Romeo himself. The name isn't any of his physical parts but just a title, and even without the Montague name, Juliet would still take Romeo for herself. After hearing this, Romeo finally reveals himself. Much much to Juliet's surprise, declaring he would give up his name for her. However, Juliet doesn't recognize him at first and attempts to leave. She demands to know his name, but Romeo says he can't say it out loud because it's the name of her enemy. Just then, Juliet recognizes his voice, much to her excitement. Still, she worries that he might face death if her relatives catch him, but Romeo declares that none of her kinsmen can stop him. The young Montague says he prefers them to end his life by their hate rather than die wanting for her love. Juliet asks him to profess his love faithfully, so Romeo climbs the tree by her balcony. She adds that she may appear too quickly won by him, but she will prove more faithful than any other woman. Romeo is about to swear by the moon, yet Juliet asks him to swear by himself, and she will believe him. When he does, they embrace each other passionately. Juliet bids him goodbye, yet Romeo still asks them to exchange faithful vows of love. Juliet puts her palm on his, and they vow to be faithful. Just then, they hear the nurse calling for her. She asks Romeo to wait before she hurries inside, so he hangs on the tree with one hand, celebrating until Juliet returns. She tells him that if his love is real, then he intends to marry her. If so, he only needs to inform her of the time and place to conduct the rite. However, if Romeo doesn't mean well, Juliet asks him to leave her alone. Romeo promises to contact her by 9 the next morning, and Juliet admits that it'll be like 20 years until then. Still unwilling to part from each other, they are together all night, and Romeo leaves only by daybreak. When the sun rises, Romeo visits Friar Lawrence. The friar assumes the lad has been with Rosaline, the girl Romeo was in love with before. The young Montague quickly clarifies that he has long forgotten the name, confessing that he's in love with Juliet. He then asks for the friar's consent to marry her today. This shocks the friar, prompting him to initially disapprove of the marriage as he believes the lad is acting too hastily in changing his heart. As they walk inside the chapel, Friar Lawrence thinks their marriage could be a way to end the long-standing feud between the two powerhouses. With that, he agrees to officiate their wedding, much to Romeo's joy. Afterward, Romeo reunites with his friends in the streets. There, Juliet's nurse, accompanied by Peter, shows up looking for him. Mercutio and his other friends ridicule the nurse's long dress, and the poor woman admonishes them for that. Even so, the nurse takes Romeo to the chapel, where they pretend to pray so Romeo can quietly ask her to tell Juliet to come to Friar Lawrence's cell in the afternoon to get married. At the Capulets' house, Juliet is growing impatient while waiting for her nurse. As soon as the nurse arrives, she relays Romeo's message, giving the girl much joy. Later that day, Juliet rushes to the chapel, where her husband-to-be eagerly awaits her. Romeo immediately runs to her and smooches her incessantly, leading Friar Lawrence to separate them. As both lovebirds can't wait to be together, the friar leads them to the altar and officiates their wedding. Meanwhile, Benvolio urges Mercutio to go home before they encounter the Capulets again, but the latter dismisses him. They see a group of Capulets approaching, led by Tybalt, but Mercutio claims he doesn't care and dips into the public fountain to cool himself off. Tybalt comes up to him and inquires if he's associated with Romeo. Instead of a proper reply, Mercutio mocks him and pulls out his sword in the water. Tybalt is about to retaliate when he sees Romeo coming. Tybalt calls Romeo a villain, but the Montague lad says that he has more love to excuse such an insult. Still, Tybalt accuses him of injuring him and challenges him to draw his sword. Romeo denies his claims and shakes his hands for peace. Dumbfounded, Tybalt acts disgusted and washes his hand, splashing water on Mercutio. Mercutio is offended and dares Tybalt to fight him. A brawl ensues while Romeo tries to stop them, but no one listens. Mercutio even orders his friend to step aside. Romeo and Benvolio get in between them, and in the confusion, Tybalt accidentally stabs Mercutio in the chest. Tybalt is shocked to find blood on his sword, so he flees with the other Capulets. While covering his wound with a piece of cloth, Mercutio collapses, complaining that he's hurt. However, his friends presume that he's just joking and continue cheering for him. Realizing what's happening to him, Mercutio leans on Romeo, asking why he came between them, which led to him getting hurt. Confused, Romeo just says he meant it for the best. Mercutio then limps up the church steps, then curses the Montagues and Capulets, accusing them of making him a worm's meat. Romeo and Benvolio are horrified when Mercutio falls down, while the others still think the injured man is fooling around. Benvolio suspects that Mercutio is dead, so Romeo checks the body and finds his friend's wound. Enraged, he cries out that Tybalt should pay for what he did. Holding the bloodied cloth, Romeo runs off, looking for the perpetrator. When Romeo finds the Capulet's kinsman, he confronts him, declaring that one or both of them must join Mercutio in heaven, and he shoves the bloodied cloth to Tybalt's face. A fierce duel begins, with Romeo fighting with his life at stake. The duel grows intense until they end up back in the square, brawling with bare hands. As Tybalt is about to lunge at him with a sword, Romeo finds another and unintentionally kills his opponent. moment, Romeo comes to his senses and laments his terrible fortune while his friends urge him to leave the place. At the Capulets' house, the nurse mourns Tybalt's death. When Juliet learns it was Romeo who killed her cousin, she bawls inconsolably. The nurse curses Romeo, but this angers Juliet, who refuses to speak ill about her cousin's murderer as he is her husband. Later, the Montagues bring Mercutio's body to the prince while the Capulets bring Tybalt's. Lady Capulet demands Romeo's death, but Lord Montague pleads that his son acted out of justice for Mercutio. The prince decides to spare Romeo's life but banishes him from Verona forever. Learning this, Romeo hides in Friar Lawrence's cell, wailing for his punishment. A sudden knock on the door alerts the friar, but it's just the nurse sent by Juliet. When she sees Romeo crying on the floor, she notes that Juliet is acting the same way. She then urges the lad to stand up for his new wife's sake. Romeo asks about Juliet and what she thinks about their cancelled love. The nurse shares that Juliet keeps on weeping, so Romeo asks where his name is embedded in his body for him to cut it off. He grabs a knife and almost stabs himself, but the friar stops him. Friar Lawrence reprimands him for being weak instead of being happy that the prince spared his life. He orders him to see Juliet and comfort her before he goes to Mantua. Romeo will live there until they find the right time to beg the prince to bring him home again. The following day, Romeo finds himself beside Juliet after spending the night together. He prepares to leave when Juliet is awakened, asking him to stay longer as she thinks it's not yet time. Granting his wife's request, Romeo jumps into her arms. Soon, however, Juliet realizes it's indeed almost time for him to leave. She hurries to help him dress, worrying that he might be late. Just then, the nurse knocks on the door to warn her that Lady Capulet is coming to her chamber. Romeo sneaks out through the balcony as Juliet asks him to write letters every day. He bids his wife a last goodbye before he runs off, leaving Juliet crying. With that, Romeo rides a horse and leaves Verona. In Juliet's room, she weeps as Lady Capulet swears to find Romeo and seek revenge. The lady then comforts her daughter by informing her that she'll marry Paris on Thursday. Contrary to what Lady Capulet expected, Juliet strongly opposes the marriage. When Lord Capulet learns of this, he barges into Juliet's room and accuses her of being ungrateful for refusing such a noble groom. Her pleading only enrages him, and he throws her against the wall. Before he leaves, Lord Capulet warns Juliet to marry Paris or he will disown her. When her father storms out, poor Juliet begs her mother to at least postpone the wedding, but even Lady Capulet turns deaf to her pleas. What's worse, the nurse also agrees that marrying Paris will be best. Juliet stops crying as she realizes no one is on her side anymore. She then lies about going to the confession when she only wants to see Friar Lawrence. At the chapel, she encounters Paris bidding goodbye to the friar. Paris greets her warmly, yet she's cold to him. Inside, Juliet cries out, seeking the friar's help. Just then, Friar Lawrence spots the flower in the basket and claims there's still hope. While he's brewing a drink out of the flower, he tells Juliet to go home and make sure she's alone in bed tonight. At that time, she should take a vial of the drink as it will slow her pulse and stop her breathing as if she were dead. After 42 hours, she will wake up from a deep sleep. Friar Lawrence plans to send a letter to Romeo, telling him to get her so they can escape to Mantua together. That night, Juliet drinks the vial as planned. The following morning, Friar Lawrence asks Friar John to deliver the letter to Romeo. Meanwhile, the whole Capulet house is in an uproar upon discovering Juliet's body and assumes she's truly dead. They then conduct a funeral, which Balthazar, a Montague servant, witnesses. Eventually, Balthazar finds Romeo to inform him that Juliet has died. Romeo immediately rides back to Verona, unknowingly passing by Friar John, who's on his way to Mantua. By nightfall, he arrives at the tomb. Romeo breaks open the door and finds dozens of corpses, and among them is Juliet. Romeo mourns how his wife still looks beautiful even in death. He grieves, thinking that he has lost her. After giving her a final kiss, Romeo chugs a bottle of poison that slowly kills him. Moments later, Friar Lawrence arrives and is horrified to see Romeo on the floor. He laments his death when Juliet finally wakes up. The friar urges her to come out with him as he can hear the watchers approaching. However, Juliet notices Romeo's body and refuses to go, forcing Friar Lawrence to leave her behind. Unable to believe what she's seeing, she inspects Romeo's body and sees the vial of poison. Realizing what he'd done, she tries to drink from it to join him, only to realize that it's empty. She then kisses him, hoping there's still poison on his lips, but there's none, much to her devastation. When she hears people approaching, she spots Romeo's dagger and stabs herself, refusing to live without his love. Her head falls on Romeo's chest, and Juliet's face looks relieved as she takes her last breath. The next day, the Capulets and Montagues head to the church, carrying the lovers' bodies side by side. The prince blames the clan's feud for their deaths, yet this procession is the only time the Capulets and Montagues unite peacefully. In the end, Romeo and Juliet's love might still be the answer to end the two families' feud.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.